Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristen Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week, I'm coming to you live from a closet in Texas. I'm in Texas visiting my coach and my team, and I have a meet this week. So please excuse me if you hear a lawnmower in the background because there's a lawnmower in the background. Today we want to talk about when goals actually become limitations rather than getting you to succeed to the next level.
Yeah.
So Kristen, you have some thoughts on that.
I do. I've talked about this a little bit on some of my Instagram posts lately because I think I recognize that this was something that potentially was a pattern for me. And I think that so many of us, as we're improving in our sport and getting stronger, we can sometimes have like these goals, these numbers that at one point seemed really far off. Like, you know, a certain squat or a certain deadlift or even a certain snatch. They seemed like they were so far away and they were kind of like, yeah, one day I'm going to hit that. One day I'm going to do that. And then, with consistency, eventually that's not so far off and you actually accomplish it. And then it's like, oh shit, like what more can I actually accomplish? I guess some of the idea is about not just never being satisfied, which is something I think that can be a slippery slope for a lot of us too, is if we're, always, pushing higher numbers and never really being satisfied with where we're at, which we have to be hungry in weightlifting and powerlifting, right? We have to be hungry in these sports, but we have to take time to celebrate our accomplishments as well. And it's a fine line between feeling satisfaction in something you accomplished and then going, wait a minute, I think I actually let that number limit me. Like I remember that number being so far away that I thought that was just the best I could ever be. And suddenly it's not. Suddenly you've surpassed it. And it's just kind of I think it's a really interesting thing. I've caught myself even, going into, hit like a rep max, so maybe a 5 rep max on deadlift, and having a certain number that I wanted to hit based upon, what my 3 rep max was or what I've done for like 7 or 8, and kind of like playing that guessing game with, well, what am I gonna hit and what number would I be satisfied with? And I think sometimes we get too caught up in those numbers. And so the other day I had a 5 rep max deadlift. And I had a number in mind I wanted to hit, and I hit it. And I sat down and I was like, sweet, I did it. And I thought about it for a second. And I was like, wait a minute. That was not a 5 rep max. Like I could have at least done another rep or probably a little bit heavier weight. So I was like, I'm not going to let this number that I predetermined that I just pulled out of my ass, essentially. I'm not going to let this number be my limit today. I'm going to see what I can accomplish. So I put 10 more pounds on the bar, and that was definitely a 5 rep max. Like that final deadlift was a grinder, and I felt like I was onto something with this idea of not getting caught up in the numbers.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think a lot of our listeners do resonate with that. If you listening resonate with that, that's great. Be very conscious of where you are in training and how you are or are not limiting yourself potentially. But for me, it's never been like that. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well, this is where the difference is between you and I. And I think anyone who's listened to our podcast for a while gets that while you and I are very similar minded, we're also very different. And so I'm a numbers person and I'm analytical and I set, like I count my macros to a T. I weigh and measure my food. I have, like a lot of number goals for things. Not that you don't have goals, you certainly do, but I have a tendency to get hung up on numbers. And I look up records and I'm like I'm going to break that record, or I'm going to put this much on my bench, or I'm going to do, it can become almost obsessive in terms of numbers when really they're arbitrary numbers, right? Like the idea is we're just going to do as best as we possibly can. But I'm always afraid that I'm going to fall short of my potential if I don't consistently strive for certain numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're training out of fear.
No, definitely not. Definitely not out of fear, but
This doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Like I have numbers in mind of what I would like to be able to accomplish, but to me it's never those numbers are truly at what would be my peak of, the next year. And then once I hit those, to me it's not like oh well, I could have done more. It's like, okay, I hit those. Let's move on. What's next?
Yeah.
I've never felt that like super hunger and that drive that you feel, like that constant need to be super like better every single time, like looking up records and I'm going to put this much on this. I'm going to do this, this, and this. My approach is more, I'm going to go in and do the best I can today. And if that means that I barely can do anything, that's fine. If that means that today's an amazing day, that's fine. Do the best I can today and then move on.
Right.
And I think that comes a lot from being in a household with really smart people.
What are you saying about the household I grew up in?
Well, I think each household is different. I had two valedictorians in my house. I had my brother and my mother. And my brother was doing my calculus homework when he was in the 6th grade and I was in high school. So I had to let go of this always wanting to strive to be better and comparing myself to other people as in records or whatever, because in my household, I would never be as smart as my brother, which is fine. And I had no resentment. I mean, I've obviously let it go. That's fine. But it allowed me to internally focus all of that stuff.
Well, and you touched on something really important there, which is comparing yourself to other people, which is something I always say. I'm only competing against myself. When we had Stacey Burr on recently, she kind of made a joke about people that say that they're just competing against themselves, but that's truly how I am. But I use these records. Yeah, but that's just like a number for me to strive for, because I'm such a numbers person that I'm like, I don't know, like my goal forever for as long as I can remember was to squat 300 pounds. And I did squat 300 pounds at my powerlifting meet last month. I think it was last month. And it was like 308. And, that had been my goal forever and ever and ever. And once I hit that, and I remember thinking like it was kind of a far off goal. Like, probably, am I ever going to actually do that? Like, I don't know. And then the older I got, like I'm almost 38, right? It was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do that. And then it became clear to me in my training for that meet that I was going to do it. And, in that meet, there was a few goals that I had in that meet, and I achieved every one of them. And I played it a little conservative, right? Like I had a little more in the tank. I maybe could have squatted a little heavier, but I wanted that 308 squat so bad that it was like I was not going to go, 2.5 kilos higher just because I could. It was like, no, I don't want to fail. I want this number. I want to know that I did this on the platform. And that's where I think that some things start to limit us. Like my last deadlift attempt at that meet, if you remember, you tried to get me to make a much bigger jump than what I made. And I talked you down. Like I was like, nope, 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 nope. I'm not doing that. I know that I can hit this number and that's what I want to hit. And it's kind of, in hindsight, it was kind of silly because, number one, like my third deadlift attempt it still looked easy. It felt easy. It was not a struggle at all. And, like what was it's not like I was trying to qualify for something. So it's just like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just go for it? So that's what this next meet that I'm doing actually is all about, is just like seeing what I'm capable of and not being afraid to fail, because in order to go big, we have to potentially fail, right? And I think that that's some of what comes with us setting these numbers and these goals and letting our goals be limits.
I definitely wanted you to make a bigger jump, because you would have totally had it on your deadlift. Without question, you would have had that.
Right. And I was terrified. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. No way. I know I can hit this. Let's do that. I still PR'd, but it was only like a 2.5 kilo PR, and it probably could have been a little higher than that. But
oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so for me, I think that I have reached a level, I think, in my lifting where I've been at it for so long that I remember thinking these numbers that I'm hitting, thinking that they would be impossible and they would be good lifetime goals. And now I'm there. It's like, you better set some better goals for yourself, because you're about to, just, I feel like I limit myself in my mind. And I think that is why I say, like, our bodies are capable of so much more. We just have to convince our minds that we can do it. And I know I've seen like a meme around that says that, and it sounds so cheesy, but it's seriously so true. We have to just sometimes put these things out of our head and just go for it. Yeah. Which brings me into another thing I actually wanted to talk about, which was...
Bring it up.
Yeah. So for a lot of us that are lifters, and that a lot of us women that have become empowered by iron, lifting is about more than lifting for us, right? Like, it's helped us overcome things in life, or has helped us have better belief in ourselves outside of the gym, in our careers or our relationships. And I think that sometimes some of the things that we've worked to overcome still kind of linger in our minds a little bit. And number one, allow us to doubt ourselves. But we had an interesting discussion in our Eat for Strength group with our Eat for Strength ladies. And really the gist of it, without giving too much personal information, but the gist of it is basically, is the gym, is our training a coping strategy, a healthy coping strategy? And when does it cross the line into an avoidance strategy for dealing with things? Which I thought was just really, really interesting, because I think we've all been there, right? Where the gym is a great distraction from things that are going on in our lives. And I think that there can be this, and at times that's needed, right? Sometimes we need that distraction, and we just need we need to just go in and lift some heavy weight and clear our minds and have this like primal belief in ourselves, like this physical belief in like what we can physically accomplish. But then when can that cross the line into being actually an unhealthy behavior, and avoiding dealing with certain things in our lives? I just think that that's such an interesting topic, and I don't have the answer to that. And I think
it has a lot to do with looking at it as an addictive behavior. If you're
Yeah.
going there and you are putting off other things in your life, not just like hanging out with friends, but important things in your life, like you're not going to big meetings or conferences or whatever because you're either afraid to miss the gym or you don't want to miss going to the gym. When it takes the number one priority in your life, that's when it becomes an issue. Unless, of course, you are a high level athlete, there are times that your lifting has to be number one. But if you're anything lower than elite, it really shouldn't be number one. Your mental health should be number one. And if it
Right.
helps you with your mental health, that's great. But if it's the only thing that you're doing that you believe helps you with your mental health, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, that's a really good point because it's one thing, something I've actually never talked about on the show before, but is that I have PTSD and I have talked about that I have a history of depression. But it's the PTSD that's actually more of a cute thing in my life over the last many years, and training has really helped me with a lot of those issues. And so for me, I talked about it in our first episode. The training is vital to my mental health, but it can't be the only thing that I do, right? Because sometimes things come up in training. If training's the only thing that you're doing to help your mental health, there are times when that's going to fail you. You have a shitty day in the gym or you have a shitty meet. And if that's what you're relying on to pull you out of a troubling time, that is not going to be helpful when things go wrong. And so I think that, we've talked about in the past, like journaling or meditation and different things and making sure that you're tackling things from multiple angles, I think is super important because, like when my training gets hard and I've had to work a lot on my mindset because I let my mind hold me back for years and years. I didn't think I was capable of certain things or whatever. I just didn't believe in myself. I thought I did, but when I really look at it, I didn't. And I had a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors. So now I've done so much work on my mindset, and there are times during hard training where I kind of have to go someplace dark in order to get through the training, in order to have that like extra fuel to get me through. And sometimes that can be problematic if you're also training for your mental health, right? So I think that having other ways of addressing issues and having people that you can talk to, and like I said, journaling, and just kind of like keeping tabs on yourself and being honest with yourself is a really important thing for those of us that use training as a tool, not the only tool, as a tool in our mental health.
Yeah, just be very careful, very cognizant of yourself and what the gym is to you. Like I said, it should not be number one. It should not be number one in your life. You agree?
Maybe. Right.
It's not number
it's
one in your
not
life.
it's not number one. It's really, really high up there.
Yeah.
For me, training is really high up there for me for the exact reasons that I have mentioned. I mean, it's,
You think of any type of addiction, like, for example, if your husband were to go into the hospital, if you were addicted to crack cocaine, let's say, just for shits and giggles, you would not be by your husband's side in the hospital because you needed to go chase that high. You need
Right.
that cocaine.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, if
totally.
someone important to you, if something is happening and it requires your attention, but you can't be there because of this other thing,
right?
In this case, lifting, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, if you're letting all your responsibilities fall by the wayside because of training, that might be a problem.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion about not letting your goals become limitations and talking about how it's all right that the gym is a coping mechanism, but be wary, it is not the only coping mechanism. And if you find yourself doing that, you need to check yourself and figure something else out.
Yeah. And definitely if these ideas resonate with you, I would love to hear from you. So shoot us an email or send us a DM on Instagram. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of us. But I would love to hear, because although I know Mary's sitting over here looking at me cross-eyed, I know I'm not the only one. So I would love to hear you guys' stories.
All right. So if you guys aren't already, go join our Women in Strength Athlete Resource Facebook group page. A lot of discussion all about training on there. It's fantastic. We also have a Patreon. So if you like the show and you like what we do, go support us on Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can make a huge difference in our ability to produce this show. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And until next time, see ya.
Bye, ladies.